We're the football team in the yellow and green. Norwich City is our name.
What's up, everyone, and welcome back to another edition of the Sunday League Screamers podcast. I'm your host of today's show, Steve McCutcheon, with my one co-host, Michael Nowen. We have another great show for you today. Before that, please take a moment, hit the bell, and subscribe to us on YouTube, iTunes, Spotify, and wherever else you guys find your podcast. Also, follow us on Twitter at the SLScreamers_pod. Today, we're continuing our mini-series of the Hooligan Half Hour, where we interview Premier League fan bases on this side of the Atlantic. So without further ado, we want to welcome James Copland from the New York Canaries to the show.
Woohoo!
Let's go!
Yeah.
Come on, you yellows.
Let's go.
Tell us a little bit about yourself, James, how you started supporting Norwich, all that kind of stuff.
Well, I don't think you start if you kind of get born into it, right? So first thing you know is you crawl across that mat and look in a mirror and suddenly you're wearing like a bright green baby grow and then it's all over. So, my dad was a Norwich fan. And so, being from Norwich, it was in the blood. Granddad as well. And that was that. So, that was how I became a Norwich fan. And then it's one of those clubs that if you're from Norwich, it's such a great community and family oriented club that you can't help but love it. So as you're growing up, it's just it's always there and you always want to go and it's in the blood.
So question for you, because I think some of the people that listen to this might not necessarily they know who Norwich is as a club, but they might not know Norwich as a community. Sounds like you've grown up there. How would you describe the community as a whole? Kind of curious to learn a little bit more about that in general as well.
Yeah, it's not, if you grow up in a place like London, you've got a choice of, about 10 different football teams. So it's very different to that. There is only one team in Norfolk, and that's Norwich, right? So it's not like you can shop around and say, oh, maybe I'll go to Brentford or Chelsea or Fulham. Like it's Norwich and everything, and the club is very much a centerpiece of the culture of the city, really. Even people that don't go, they keep an eye on the results, and they talk about the football club, and it's very much a centerpiece. So as a city, Norwich is a fantastic place, very much a mixture of the old and the new. 3-story shopping malls built underneath a 1,000-year-old castle.
That's cool.
It's really neat, but it's a very nice balance as a city of the old and the new, to respect the history, but at the same time be a modern city. So that's about that on the city itself. But culturally, again, it's like the club is the centerpiece. People love the football club and everything about it. And we're very lucky because the club is actually run by an awesome bunch of people who also care as much as the fans do. So it's like one big family.
Interesting. That's pretty awesome. What so you're saying all right, for here in the States, a lot of people if you live in New Jersey, for instance, you could be a New York Jets fan, New York Giants fan, you could be a Philadelphia Eagles fan, you could be a Dallas Cowboy fan, just because all the TV rights are different and it doesn't really matter being local to the club and from the area that they're from. Is it different over in England with the football clubs?
Yeah, I mean, you've got 92 professional teams, right? So kind of every city or town has a team. And then outside of that, there's the non-league teams. So it's very different. I always hear people talk about a lot of the banter or maybe the occasional trouble that breaks out at games, or definitely used to break out in the 80s and early 90s. But people talk about the rivalries, but it's very different here. You'll have a team like the Yankees or a team like the Red Bulls or whatever sport it is. You've got 3 whole states full of towns and cities that support this one team.
Yeah.
We're very passionate about one team, and 40 miles that way is another team, and of course we hate them. So and then 40 miles that way is another team. So it's very, very much close. It's all about local pride and passion. It's kind of different. Here I feel like those rivalries are very much they're kind of weak gravy compared to the English ones, because it's just there's so many different fans and it's so far apart, and it's just people kind of don't seem to care as much about it as they do in England. For instance, if you go to Yankees Red Sox games, it's just everyone's mixed together.
I was gonna say, what's the closest rivalry even in comparison then? If that's a weak, I didn't realize I was such a weak gravy.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I guess people talk a lot about Yankees and Red Sox as being this fierce rivalry. I mean, it's just, to me, that's really funny, because if you sit in a stadium, everyone's next to each other, and it's really, sharing popcorn. You would never find that at a Norwich Ipswich game. In fact, they have to stay behind before we let them out again. And the same when we go there, and they bring police horses in from Nottingham and London to help out with that game. And it's a not that there's any trouble, but passions run high, and you never know, something on the pitch or a decision or something that happens might spark a little bit of a overzealous response from certain people. But it's very different, the rivalries and the. I was just this past weekend at the NYCFC Red Bulls game, and it's again very, very, very weak rivalry compared to what we used to.
The MLS is it's nowhere near that level, but definitely I'm just trying to think of anything remotely close, and I would have to say maybe like, I'm trying to think, Steve, maybe like
UNC and Duke was the closest that came to my mind in college.
Yeah, where people just cannot sit near each other, but
and they're 8 miles apart or whatever it is. That's the only thing I can think of, honestly.
Yeah.
Yep, never seen that one, so I'll have to look out for it.
Yeah. So, question for you: since you've been supporting Norwich, we haven't gotten into how long exactly, but since that point on, what's been the fondest memory of the club so far? Can you kind of walk us through the best moments that you've had as a Norwich fan?
Lots of ups and downs, that's for sure.
It's never dull.
Probably well aware, we go up and we come down and we go up again. But that's kind of our story at the moment, is a little bit of a yo-yo team. We try to hopefully resolve that this year and stay up. But it's been varied. I mean, across our history, we've done some spectacular things. We're the only team in British history to beat Bayern Munich at the Olympic Stadium. I think that stadium was there for like 40 years, and we only team to do it. So there's a little piece of history. Some of my favorite moments have been, actually one of my favorite moments was a game we lost at the playoff final in Cardiff. I just fondly remember, dyeing my hair green that morning and being very excited to go to the game and hang out on the street with everybody beforehand. I was, very early 20s, so it was a fond memory. So there's lots of them. You tend to enjoy the good times, and then the bad times go along. But we've had so many good times. I personally take them with a pinch of salt. So it's like that if you go down again, there's a good chance you can come back up again, and then you'll have another fantastic season where you lose like 6 games. So lots to enjoy. I try not to take the Premier League losses too hard, because, as I said, it's like we've been lucky and had so many good wins and so much success in the last few years, bouncing backwards and forwards. It's some clubs will stay down and never come back up. So I have to say we've been pretty lucky in that respect.
Like Ipswich.
Like Ipswich, and they can stay down. In fact, they can stay.
That was something actually I wanted to bring up too, because I know you were talking about like a lot of the highs, and obviously last season getting promoted, something that's super awesome, and not even just the way that not the fact that you got promoted, but the way you did, and the way that Norwich was able to come up, and some of the young players that they were able to integrate into that team who did phenomenally well, right? And I was kind of curious from your perspective, how was it kind of watching that season unfold, kind of knowing, from the beginning or even from the middle part, like, hey, like there's like a real probability and a real chance we're going to go up. And, has that, when you were coming into this season, did you have like pretty high expectations initially? And how is that like translated?
Yeah, I think last season was a little bit, we were expected to do well, right? Because we'd gone down, we'd kept most of our players together, and we had we knew with pretty much a similar group of players, or a lot of the same players, we'd done it before. So we knew that the manager was capable of it. We knew the players were capable of it. And I kind of expected us to be in the top 6 mix. I don't think I expect us to win it outright like we did. But just a fantastic season, really. It's it's a great bunch of lads. It's a mixture of players that have been brought in that have been very cleverly scouted. That team, the likes of Buendia, who now is at Aston Villa. That we found him. Our scouts found him for. Oh, hang on a second, Alexa. Alexa, stop. Sorry, she'll do that
She's
sometimes. I'm
always
sure
eavesdropping.
Always, right? So we found players like Buendia for like 1.5 million, languishing in like the Spanish second division. I think at the time he was a little bit overweight, and we turned that guy into, I say we, Barker and co, and the coaches turned that guy into an absolute stud who ended up moving for about 33 million, but not before scoring a bunch of goals and creating a bunch of assists. So clever scouting and putting a lot of faith in youth players like Todd Campbell to come through the team has been key. Max Aarons, Ben Godfrey at Everton, they've been very much key to the success. And I think while we don't spend a large amount of money, we've spent quite a lot this year when we came out to the Premier League, but in the past we've stuck to our blueprint, which has been good scouting, faith in the youth system. The club is more important than getting yourself into debt to chase glory. So being self-sustainable has been a model that I think a lot of clubs are envious of. Obviously, it's very different now when you get into the Premier League and you've got sheikhs throwing billions of dollars at things, and you're never going to compete. It's one of those. That's why I say I take the Premier League a little bit with a pinch of salt, because we're never going to compete with those kind of teams. You'll never. Back in the early 90s, you had a chance, right? You'd go up and you'd have a chance at finishing in the top six or going to Europe. Now it's completely outside for anyone outside of those top six clubs, because
it's happened recently. Let's not forget Leicester. But
a lot of people talk about Leicester as the surprise package, but they also that year spent a ton of money. I think a lot of people don't look past that they did spend a ton of money, and they were at the time. Also, and they still are also really heavily bankrolled by a very rich person, very rich family. So
they are. That's true.
Out of curiosity then, what's your take on the Newcastle takeover?
I hate it. And it's not just because it's the money, and I think it's spoiling the game, which it is, because it's creating another tier that just means anyone else completely can't be competitive, especially when you're trying to live beyond your means, live within your means, and there's a club that's living beyond their means and just throwing money at it. But I think the Newcastle one is a little different to the Man City or Liverpool or any other clubs that have rich owners. I think this one was is a little bit of a political shit show, to be honest with you. I think the fact that it was allowed to happen is a disgrace, especially when you look at a country like Saudi Arabia that has really shitty human rights. Terrible human rights. Been involved in murder of journalists. Owns women. Throws gay people in prison. It's shocking that the Premier League would even allow them to, or even entertain the idea to let them take over a football club, and essentially that's exactly what's happened.
I totally agree. I think it's interesting too, like, especially not to go down a black hole and a rabbit hole, because obviously we heard her talk about Norwich, but the fact that, with the Super League and everything, and that massive outcry by not only just like, the fans of the teams who are involved in that, and the way the Premier League and all the other, what's the word I'm looking for? Delegations, I guess. So like, whether it was like UEFA, FIFA, so on. So like the way they responded to that, to kind of see them come in and just let it, like you said, just happen and not really think about it and think about the consequences, I thought was pretty mind-boggling personally. But at this point,
and it's amazing. I mean, it's sports washing, but it's incredible how people very easily forget all that stuff. I know, when they start thinking about the players they're probably going to sign. It's the money becomes more important than anything else, which is really, really sad.
Yeah, it'll be an interesting January window for them. But let's get back to Norwich. What do you think? What's kind of the expectations for the rest of the season, you think?
Do you know, I don't know. This season, I still feel like our season hasn't started yet. It's been such a strange one. I think completely was unfair, the fixture list that we had.
we brought that up like 4 times over on this I mean,
it was truly brutal. On top of having some games canceled in preseason because of COVID. Yeah. We then came into the season with a completely foreign formation to one we played before. Farke had been very successful with a 4-2-3-1. That's how we've played we played the last time in the Premier League, last 2 championship campaigns. It was very successful. The first time we went up, conceded a lot of goals. It was more about personnel thing, not having good enough players to play that system.
Mhm.
Back in the championship, we were conceded a lot less goals with that system last year with the personnel we had. We came up and rather than sticking with it, we started playing a 4-3-3. And I think that's the one thing, I love Daniel Farke. Is the one thing that I didn't like was that change to that shape. Off the ball, the team looked lost. They didn't know, who they were marking, who they were chasing, what spaces they were covering. And it's bad enough when you have a new system to play, let alone when you're playing Liverpool, then Man City, and then Leicester and Arsenal. I actually didn't think, obviously people only pay attention to the win column, but I didn't think they were terrible against Arsenal or Leicester. I think we just, it was a 1-goal difference. Watford was unacceptable. That was a really poor performance. Everton wasn't great, but again, changed the system. And now we're playing 3 at the back with 3 kind of very defensive-minded midfielders behind the 2 forwards, which I think that might be the best approach right now as we try and steady the ship. But I think he's going to have to pepper in some creativity because right now there's very little creativity feeding the front line. It's defensively sound now. We haven't conceded the goal in 2 games, but we also haven't scored one. So there's a lot of talent sitting on the bench, a lot of money spent sitting on the bench that isn't in the side that's going to need to find its way in, and also keep that balance of not conceding goals and being soft. So it'll be interesting to see how he deals with that now over the next few games. But it really feels that the season's kicking off for us now. Things are starting to settle a little bit. And
was there a reason he changed the formation, or that was ever explained, or was it just something like, hey, we want to try something new? We're in the Premier League again for the second time. The first time around may have not worked, and we need to do something to kind of steady or stymie what was happening.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's largely because a lot of teams in the Premier League play that way now. 4-2-3-1 used to be very popular with every team in the Premier League. Now a lot of teams will play 3 at the back, or a lot of teams will play a 4-3-3, including Man City and some of the top teams. So in his mind, maybe he was going to match them, and that was how I was going to go about things. But I will have to see. As I said, it's like notoriously he's a slow starter anyway. Even the seasons we've won in the championship, we started slowly, and then you throw in the COVID games and the brutal start. I think it's been a little bit of a tough start, but we're starting to settle now, and I think we'll start to see some improvements.
Where do you think in the squad you could use the biggest boost? Midfield?
Yeah, there's some new players come in that are really, really, really like Matthias Norman. Looks like he's an absolute money. He's going to be very important going forward. Pierre-Lise Malou doesn't look that bad. He looks okay to me. He hasn't set the world alight. But we play those 2 along with Kenny McLean the last few games in a midfield 3, and then you have Sargent and Pukki up top, and it just feels like there's a little bit of a lack of creativity, especially when you have players like Campbell and Jolis and Rashica, Dowell, all these players that they're sitting around that really are there to create goals. Those guys, you're gonna have to start peppering them in to find the goals, because I can't see that midfield digging out too many assists.
From what I've seen so far, from what I've noticed, at least about Norwich, I don't think they played Rashica too much, have they? From my understanding.
And we started. When we were playing a 4-3-3, there was a lot more of a creative,
because
team.
When he was at Werder with Sargent, I mean, he was, a workhorse on that team. And granted, they were in a relegation battle and whatnot, but you would think, for a player of his quality, especially too, he should be and would be getting more opportunity, more chances, and he should be creating more from that place from to your point. So
I think he will. I think it's one of those things whereas we were conceding too many goals and we were very soft. And the 3-man midfield now is designed to stop the rot, just to not concede goals and then build on that. But as you said, it's like he's not there to sit on the bench, and he's a good player, and he needs to find his way in the team. But then again, so does Campbell. Campbell is a phenomenal football player. He finds space, he links play. He drags players away so other players can take space. He's it's an excellent footballer, and he's going to have to find his way into the team as well.
I gotcha. So do you think it's more on like the manager, or do you think he's doing the right thing, right in the ship, getting the clean sheets now, and then working on the attack going forward?
Yeah, I think that's it. I think it's like let's not get hammered. Let's solidify things defensively, and then slowly build, pepper in some creative players, to into that team. So I think that's what's going to happen. I don't think we'll see. We've got Chelsea next at the Bridge, so that's going to be a case of more of the same. I don't think he's going to change it. I think it'll be the same team that started the last game. I think it'll be, let's not concede and let's see how we do. Just try and get a good performance out of it before we face some games that we can win.
Yeah, I mean, you almost took all 3 points from the Brighton match anyway. Sargent easily should have buried that. Definitely one, if not two of them. So.
Yeah, no, I'm a massive Sargent fan. I think he's awesome. His work rate. I love players that work hard, and he's my type of player because he's just doesn't stop running, doesn't stop closing down. Hungry. He just lacks confidence, and I'm not surprised. I mean, he was in the last US squad. I think it was the last
World Cup
we just had. And he was taken out in one of the games after 45 minutes and kind of made a scapegoat. Traveled all the way around the world and then came back, and I don't think he's got confidence right now. It certainly doesn't look like it when you snatch at that empty net like he did on Saturday. But I think he's going to get his confidence and he'll score goals. He looks like he's 21 as well. Let's remember he's still a kid, and he's got plenty of time on his side.
Gotcha. Who we've talked about so many different players already. Who's been the most fun to watch so far for you, at least?
This season?
Yeah.
Well, I wouldn't say any of our performances would inspire me to use the word fun. But I would definitely say Sargent's I like watching Sargent. I like to see players really get stuck in and work hard. Matthias Norman as well. I think he's one of those defensive players that has also got an eye for an assist or a clever pass, or a little trick. He's been very good to watch as well. I think he's one to watch for anyone that wants to see a decent player in the Premier League. But apart from that, we've as I said, it feels like we're just starting to play well now, starting to look like we're going to build on something as a part to get apart from getting hammered 5-0 every week, opposed to that, which is what we kind of started the season with Liverpool and Man City, and
You guys got put into a gauntlet. It was not fair.
It was pretty tough. But you know what? You got to play them sometime, and
might as well get it done early.
That's right. Get it out of the way. Now we can go win the league, right?
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Qualify for Europe, right? So with that said, too, I mean, it's not like you're just looking at the standings, at least right now, too. Like Burnley's at 3, Newcastle's at 3. Newcastle's going to have their issues, and I'm sure in the window they'll probably spend a little bit. But in all honesty, and we've been talking about this too, it's not like there isn't a possibility where there could be like a 4 or 5 game run where it's just solid points, solid games that come out of that, whether it's like 8 or 9 points here, something along those lines out of that. And, very quickly Norwich could be potentially out of that relegation race. So there's every opportunity, and at the end of the day, so the season's still young. But
yeah, I think we've actually been lucky that there's a lot of shitty teams in there that haven't done anything. I think we've been lucky in that respect, because if we can put something together now, you just said 1 or 2 wins and suddenly you're mid-table. It's not, it's certainly achievable as long as we're going to have to start putting those wins together sooner rather than later, and taking those chances that we're creating, because we're not creating too many. And so the ones that we do create, we're going to have to take.
Do you think am I pronouncing that right? Fark? I want to make sure.
Farka, yeah.
Farka. There we go. Like in Meet the Fockers. Farka.
Yeah. Farka. Yeah.
But I'm curious with him in particular. Obviously, you said already that you like him a lot as a coach. You think he does a lot of the right things tactically. Given the way that the team's been performing thus far, do you think he's built and earned the right to have the credibility to keep Norwich and kind of keep running the team for the next, whether it's a couple of weeks, even given the results the way they have been, whether it's the rest of the season, or do you think at a certain point you have to make a change? How does that kind of look like from your perspective and some of the other fans' perspectives?
From my perspective, I think he's earned the right to get it right. He's done miracles really in the past, and he's given us 2 titles. And the last time out in the Premier League, I think, was a little unfair on him. Stuart Webb, our sporting director, always said that the last time out, he sent him to war without a gun, right?
Yeah.
Because we didn't spend any money, and largely we were playing in the Premier League with a team that had just won the championship and was conceding a lot of goals, but playing fun attacking football. This time round, we've spent about 60 million. We have signed some good players. He's definitely got the players to stay up and to win games. He's just got to find that balance, and that's what he's trying to do now. It's like stop the rot, but also find the right 11 that you can start every week and grind out a result or get something done.
You think that's the same consensus across all the other?
No. I think this in the days of social media now that we're in, it's very common that you have the teenage keyboard warriors on a Saturday afternoon just screaming Barker out or you shit is gonna go. There's a lot of that, and there's a lot of people who think that you have a right to be in the Premier League and be winning every week, and you don't, and it's you can't just throw something away because it hasn't worked out in 6 games. So there is definitely people that don't think he can do it at the highest level. I'm not one of those. I think he's going to fix it. He's shown in the past that he's taken issues and that where perceivably something has been broken and found the balance and fixed it. And I think he'll do that again with us here. Might take a few more games. As I said, so we'll have to get Chelsea out of the way first. But I think he's on the right track now. He's just got to figure out how to sprinkle in the creative talent into a solid, defensive foundation.
So do you think he goes and spends in January at all, or you basically have the squad you think you're going to stick with the whole season?
No, I think they have it. I mean, we spent a lot of money in the summer, so he definitely has a lot of players on the bench and around the fringes, and he's got a squad. He's just got to find the good right 11 and start winning games. It's not just the balance. It's obviously it's confidence and it's motivation and everything else that he's going to have to dig deep to find. But he's done it before, so no reason to think he can't do it again.
So with that in mind, I'm curious to get your bold prediction coming up. Where do you think Norwich ends up finishing the season, or what are you hoping for? What are you expecting? Reverse, what are you expecting?
If you'd asked me 2 months ago, I could have told you exactly. We would have been mid-table. But
actually, there you go. I was going to say, in the beginning of the season, what were you thinking versus now?
Yeah, I think we were confident going into the season. A lot of people were confident that we would spend money. We had some good, some talented players coming in that scored goals at other places. And that we were going to be mid-table or we'd be fine. I still think we're going to be okay. Again, there's a lot of people push the panic button very soon. He's always struggled in every campaign at the start, really. It's taken a while to find his best team and his best balance. And this has been especially hard, start of the season for the things that we talked about. On top of that, I think he'll get it right. I think we'll start to pick up some points and start chasing those teams around as the Burnleys, the Newcastles. Newcastle now, it doesn't matter who they bring in as a manager. I don't think they have the talent. No. I don't think, they're going to have to. It's going to take them seasons and seasons for them to spend that money and become what they're going to become. So I think Burnley is also there for the picking. Watford to a degree too. They've got a great manager now, but they can't spend money yet until January. So I think we're going to be fine. I think we'll put a couple of wins together and we'll start to be a little bit more competitive, and then it'll become a real race to safety.
I was going to say the next couple of games, at least for you guys too, coming up after the Chelsea game, it's Leeds. If I'm reading the schedule right, Leeds, Brentford, Southampton, Wolves, Newcastle, like right there. right? Or unless
there's a lot of winnable games. You're right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
that could be this run right there where everything
it
comes
totally
come
could.
together.
Yeah,
So.
Leeds at home, Brentford away, and then Southampton and Wolves at home, especially tasty. Obviously, you've got to be playing well to win those games. There's no shit teams in the Premier League. There's no gimmies. Everyone can beat anyone else on the day. And teams, we saw this past weekend where Wolves came from behind and won 3-2 against Villa. They're capable of being a very good team as well. So, but if we can step up another gear and as I said, find that creativity to the solid base we now have, who knows? We could put some results together. You're right. There's maybe there could be potentially 9 points right there in those 6 games.
Easy. Yeah, easily.
Do you think you can bring in players like Cantwell or Rashika as the wing backs that you're kind of seeing now, or do you have to switch up the formation to get them in there?
Yeah, I don't think so. We have. I mean, our right back or right wing back, we play a 3 is Max Aarons. You're not going to find a better one. No one wants to replace him. He's fantastic.
He's phenomenal.
On the left side, Giannoulis is very good going forward. Not so good at defending. Brandon Williams came from Man United, is also fighting for that spot. A little bit hit or miss with me. He made some big mistakes in a couple of games that he played where he started, which did cost us goals. So I'm not a massive fan of his. I think he is a good player, but he's not quite ready yet. But we've got players sitting on the bench that I'd like to see come into that midfield 3. I think if we're looking at where do you add that creativity, you have to look at McLean and Pierre-Lise Malou's positions and say that's where you're going to add it. Maybe Cantwell for McLean and just have a player that is a little bit more of a creative force in that 3 coming in to start with, and then seeing how that goes.
Has Gilmore had a chance to play, or has he been hurt?
First couple games.
Yeah, and then he got dropped. I'm not really sure why he got dropped. He seemed to play. He had one bad game, but he seemed to be playing pretty well. I would have him in the team over Kenny McLean right now. Not that Kenny's not a good solid player. I just think Gilmore is probably has the ability to create a little bit more, be a little bit more box to box. But yeah, as you said, you've got some options on the bench. There's Gilmore, Rashica, Jolis, Cantwell. It's not like you're not spoiled for attacking options. Yeah,
I gotcha. What so next 2-3 years, what's the outlook for Norwich in your opinion?
Oh, too hard to say. Either we'll be winning the championship again, or we'll be still in the Premier League. I think even if you stay up in the Premier League every year, you're just fighting to maybe have one exceptional year and maybe make the Europa League, right? I mean, anything else is just not attainable. And I think that's a little sad to think, but money has ruined the game so much now that unless you're spending 300 million in every transfer window and paying wages of 200,000 a week, you're certainly not going to be competitive in the top 4.
So curious that you say that too. So I'm assuming you're familiar with Brentford's story, right? So would you be open to, and I'm not familiar with how Norwich scouts their players and what that process is like, but the way that they do their Moneyball process.
Oh, Moneyball, yeah.
Would you be open to that kind of idea if you guys were on a tighter shoestring budget and kind of try to pull that statistical kind of angle?
I think everyone does that now. Maybe they do it. They take gambles more than most people on players based on numbers. But now every single team uses Stat Tracker best. They know exactly. When they get numbers from a player that they're looking at, they know exactly what they can offer, what areas of the field they work, how many tackles they put in, how many assists they have, are they likely to get assists, what's their expected goal. The numbers are out there already, and I think most clubs have now data analysts and folks that kind of crunch those numbers to find players across Europe that maybe they can improve on. Brentford, they've started great. Let's be honest, they've had a great start to the season, but we've seen that before with Sheffield United, and then last season they went down. So it's not always the short term. As a club, I think I love the way that Norwich is run. That we are self-sustainable. We're not in any risk of going bust or having to sell our best players, and we're not gambling that if we do go down, that we're going to have to like suddenly sell all those players that are on high wages because now you can't afford it. It's done in a fashion where it's a slow incline, but it's serviceable, right? So if you did go back down again, you could very likely keep a lot of the players together and still pay the wages and not have to worry about selling them because you can't make ends meet, which is a lot of teams will just throw the book at it and then worry about the debt later.
It's crazy. I never understood how some of them do that. You mentioned Buendia earlier, buying him for whatever 1.5 million, selling him for upwards of 30 to 40 in that range. Do you think one player like himself has such an impact that he's gone now that you're in the position you guys are in, like with creativity problems, or do you think you filled the role or filled in the squad enough behind him?
It's actually really hard to say because a lot of people think that, and listen, you definitely miss his talent. And you definitely miss the relationship that he has with Teemu Pukki because, you know, they were on the same wavelength, right? He would find those gaps where Pukki would make a run and suddenly he would be on the ball. It's difficult to say because we have changed our shape. So that you can't say that we've actually brought in a direct replacement for Emi Buendia because he played on the right of a three behind Pukki with two in the pivot role behind him. So we haven't taken him out and put someone there and said, hey, you know, here's your replacement. Compare the two. We've come out of the gate with a brand new shape and we're doing things differently. I think a lot of people thought Rashica was going to be that person, but then the shape changed and we had to start using different personnel. We're going to have to see.
The shapes changed because of him though? Like leaving?
No, I don't think so. I honestly think Farke took a look at other teams and thought a lot of people are playing 4-3-3 and you know 3-5-2, and he wanted to be able to adapt game to game and play all the shapes, you know, match other teams. I think that's what he was thinking. He definitely didn't change the shape just because Emi Buendia's gone. You know, but it's hard to say. We do miss the goals, but would Emi Buendia be as successful in a 4-3-3? Has he been that successful playing for Villa
so far?
I mean, I think he's got 1 assist and 1 goal. Listen, he's a wonderful player, but you know, we could judge at the end of the season.
Fair enough.
Fair, very fair. We kind of got to start wrapping up. Unfortunately, I love talking to the lower tier sides because the top 6 is always very different conversations from the guys in the mid table to like the relegation battle. I love these way better. But where can everyone find out more about you, the New York Canaries, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, well, we live at the Football Factory, which is 6th West 33rd Street in Manhattan, right below the gaze of the Empire State Building. You can find us on Facebook, New York Canaries, at New York Canaries on Twitter. We love people to come and join us and watch a game on a Saturday.
The Football Factory, for those who are listening to, phenomenal place. I've been there personally. I got cursed out by a bunch of Chelsea fans during a Tottenham game. So it was great. And the Guinnesses were phenomenal. I know you were just rifling about that too, James, before we jumped on. So
yeah, it's you know, the Football Factory, for anyone who doesn't know, is run by Jack Keane, who's a proud Irishman and a Man United fan, and he does like his Guinness.
Anything else to add, boys?
All good.
Cool. What's up?
I said up the city. That's it. That's all I got left.
We'll have all the links to everything down below in the comments for everyone that's curious about the New York Canaries and also James himself. So that'll do it for this episode of the Sunday League Screamers podcast and Hooligan Half Hour. Take a moment, like, comment, hit the bell, subscribe to us on YouTube, iTunes, Spotify, and Apple. Follow us on Twitter at the SL Screamers Pod for daily tweets about the Premier League, world football in general, United States men's national team. I'm your host of today's show, Steve, with Michael and James. Signing off.